I'm very happy to welcome the panel of today. It's the theme Unity. Next to me, that's Dr. Susan Durber, moderator of the Faith and Order Commission in the World Council of Churches, and Reverend Dr. Andrzej Choromanski, representative for the Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity, and also a member of the Faith and Order Commission. And today we have been able to listen to the plenary on unity, so may I invite Dr. Durber to do the first short introduction on unity.
Mm-hmm. Well, today we've been thinking about the document, The Church Towards a Common Vision, on which members of the Faith and Order Commission and churches with whom we've been consulting have worked for decades. And we're trying to discern together how we can be the church and participate in God's mission. And we've been reflecting on the things that divide us, so some of the most difficult things, but also reflecting deeply on those things that we share and which we can really say together. And we believe that God has a mission, has a design for creation, and God is seeking to mend our brokenness and bring us into unity. And that God has called us as the church to be part of that mission. So part of what we need to do as the church is to receive God's gift to mend our brokenness, to be reconciled with one another, so that we can be a really effective sign and servant of the mission of God in the world. So this is the urgency of unity, not just because it's interesting and we'll feel more comfortable, but so that it will really renew us and equip us to serve God's mission to the world. We know as members of the Commission that many people are suffering, the creation is suffering, and we believe and trust that God has good news for this creation and for God's people, which we see so powerfully through the mission and the life and death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And we want to work together and come together around one Eucharistic table so that we can be prepared to serve God's mission in the world. So that's what we're about.
Thank you very much. Then I will ask the same question to Dr. Choromanski.
Thank you very much. Welcome to everybody. Thank you, Dr. Durber, for this introduction in which you have stressed the dimension of mission of the Church towards the world. I would like, in my short introduction, to mention and to stress another dimension of the unity, which is the nature of the Church. And when we speak about the unity of the Church, we need to remember that this unity is not only unity in action, it's not only unity in mission, in what we do towards the Church, but also unity in the constitutive elements of the Church as such. And we believe that this unity is a multifold unity, which implicates unity in faith, in the apostolic faith. It implicates unity in the celebration of Eucharist and in other sacraments, and unity or in other acts of worship, and also unity in what we call witness to the world and service to the world in Christian life. So we cannot forget that this unity we look for, we search for, is not only unity in mission. It is unity which is multifold, and we should maintain this balance between serving the world and being and preserving our identity as Church of Christ.
And I wouldn't disagree with any of that, but I think that our unity in apostolic faith and our unity around the table of the sacraments and is what will make us equipped to serve God in the world and to be part of God's mission. So yes, absolutely, we need to find our unity in apostolic faith, which God is giving us. But I think that's not just an end in itself, but it is to be a sign of unity. I think that's what we are searching for. And sometimes people say, well, it doesn't really matter about finding common faith, and it doesn't really matter if we don't acknowledge each other's ministries, because as long as we're doing the right things together in the world, that's enough. But I think that's not enough. And it's only when we really can acknowledge each other's ministry and faith as one that we will be fully worthy and equipped to serve God in the world, being the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. When we are broken, when we don't recognise each other's service and ministry, then I don't think we are serving God together. So the two things go absolutely together. And I am both hugely committed to God's mission in the world, but absolutely committed to the unity of the Church. And it's a new kind of disunity somehow that we see in the Church, where there are those who want to say it's all about the Church, and those who want to say it's all about mission. You cannot speak about mission without the Church, or the Church without mission. They have to be together. And sometimes I think none of us can see the wholeness of this vision without each other. So part of what I rejoice in being part of the ecumenical movement is that I see the Christ I have not seen by looking at my brother. I see that in the gospel which I have not heard by looking at my sister. So this is part of the real joy of the ecumenical movement, being led into a broader space.
Thank you very much. I have received the first question from a journalist asking a basic question. We are talking about the Faith and Order Commission from the World Council of Church, and then we have a representative from the Catholic Church. Could you explain?
Well, the Faith and Order Commission is part of the World Council of Churches, but it's one of the parts that includes the full participation of the Roman Catholic Church, which is one of our great gifts.
For how long time?
We've been, if I remember well, since 1968 in this commission, at least, or even longer. And the principle ruling the Catholic participation in the commission is that we have 10% of seats, of full membership seats in the commission. When the commission was bigger, we had up to 12 persons on the commission. Now the commission has been reduced after the last assembly in Busan, and we have four full members of the commission, voting members and working members. And so we're happy to be on this commission as full members, and we believe that this Catholic input is also important. Why is it important? Because Faith and Order Commission is the main theological commission of the World Council of Churches. And the documents it produces are not only the vision of church members, because the Catholic Church is not a member, not a full member of the World Council of Churches, but also these visions reflect wider vision of Christian faith on an issue like, for example, the church.
Thank you very much. I have received another question from a church magazine in Australia asking, how do you really work together? Could you describe the work of the Faith and Order in a short term?
Well, we've had now the first meeting of a new commission, 49 members, and we met last year, and we began by talking about the concerns that we have as churches and as communities from where we are. And we talked about all sorts of things, from refugees, FGM, or economic crisis, all sorts of things, and secularism in some places, the challenge of being in a multicultural place, a multi-religious place, all sorts of things. And then we said, what are the issues that are dividing the churches now? Because that's our particular vocation, to address those issues. So we drew out all the things that the churches are concerned about, and then we focused down on 3 particular things. So we're continuing our work on this document, The Church. We're focusing on the theological underpinning of the pilgrimage of justice and peace. And we're also focusing on the moral and ethical questions that are dividing churches. Because often now, it's not necessarily questions about how we understand the Eucharist that divide churches, but it's moral questions. So we are thinking together about how we can face those questions side by side.
Thank you. I think we have also a question from the floor. Marcelo.
Yeah, I would like to encourage you to reflect on how this exercise of affirming identity or searching for paths of identity, reflection, affirmation, and so on, is related to interreligious dialogue. How do you place Christianity in this exercise of identity affirmation in the dialogue with other faith expressions?
I think part of the key to that is having a kind of confidence about your identity as Christian, of being able to say clearly what it is that it means to be a Christian. And then we can enter into dialogue with others. We don't need to be defensive. We need to have a kind of confidence about who we are. And then we can talk in humility. This is who I am. It's not a kind of position that I hold in an abstract way, but it is who I am in the world. And part of what it is to be a Christian is, I think, to be open to the whole world. We see in Jesus himself one who announced good news to those who were outside his own community, and who entered into dialogue with those at the margins of his own place. So I think we should always, as Christians, feel that we're able to enter into conversation. I know sometimes from my work in Faith and Order, I meet Christians for whom this is really difficult. For me, in the United Kingdom, sometimes interreligious dialogue can feel kind of interesting and, it's not dangerous. But for some of my colleagues, it may cost them their lives or their freedom. So I understand that this conversation can be costly too. But I think it has to be rooted in a common sense of confidence in being followers of Jesus Christ.
Thank you. Maybe I have a follow-up?
Yeah, this is probably an appropriate day to talk about unity in a political sense, I guess. But what I was wondering was, the perception of the church. It is important how people, the perception of unity or not unity, and the religious dialogue that you just touched upon. Isn't there a risk that there would be not favorable perception?
Well, Christian unity, I know that the word unity can be devalued in a political sense, and it can be associated with a kind of dominance and even a kind of oppression, where one voice makes everyone else conform. And I think one of the things that's happened in Faith and Order is that we use often the word koinonia, communion, which I hope expresses something which is more like interrelationship, mutuality, and exchange, which is open to the other, and which is open to change, and which it has humility about it. And I think that is the kind of unity, the kind of communion that Faith and Order want to talk about. So I recognise that what we've seen in some of the political debates is a rejection of a kind of top-down unity and a search for something that allows more space for mutuality and which allows for the voices at the margins to be heard. And I think that's the kind of unity that we seek in Faith and Order.
May I ask a word on that? When speaking about this perception of Christianity and the unity of the Church, it depends very much on the context in which we are speaking about this issue. For example, when you speak about this in the Middle East, in the situations where Christians are persecuted, it is striking to see that those who persecute Christians do not make distinctions between Protestants, Catholics, or evangelicals, or others, or Orthodox. For them, it is enough that you have a cross on your neck, or you have a Bible in your hand, and it means you are Christian. And I was struck by what the Pope Francis said some months ago, when he said that it is a shame for us Christians that those who persecute us sometimes understood better than we do what the unity of the church means. Because when they persecute and kill us, they don't ask, either are you Catholic, are you Orthodox? It is not that you are Christian, you believe in Christ, and you suffer because of that. So these perceptions are very different from where we're speaking, the local situation. It is a different approach. Here in the Western democratic world, it is absolutely different political, social, religious vision of unity in different contexts, for example in Africa or in Middle East.
Then I have received also a question regarding the Holy and Great Council in Crete at this moment. How do you relate to that meeting? You are here in Trondheim, Norway. Maybe I could ask Dr. Durber.
Yes, well, the director of Faith and Order spent some time at the Great Council before coming on here, and our General Secretary did as well. And we've all been eagerly, watching what is being said, and actually really appreciating some of the ways in which those present have spoken about the unity of the Church and the need to try to overcome the sense of one being higher up than another, and looking to those who are poorest and suffering in their communities. So it's a great shame that these two events are overlapping, but our hearts are there and our prayers.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions from the floor? Then I will take my own question. I have asked the same every day. We are almost in the midterm evaluation, and we are heading the next assembly, 2021. What do we want to achieve before next assembly from a Faith and Order perspective? You have 4 years.
Yes. Well, we're hoping to achieve, first of all, lots of responses to our text on the Church, and a really good analysis of them. And this time we're not having one person analyse all the texts, but we're doing that ecumenically together, which I think is very positive. And we will see what issues come up for us to work on. I hope that we will take the text on the project on moral discernment much further, and I really hope that our voice will be strong in reflection on the pilgrimage of justice and peace. And I think we are working really hard at engaging with a broader constituency of churches, increasingly with Pentecostal churches, with some new and emerging churches. And we want to do theology in a way that is not necessarily like Faith and Order has always done theology, with the same vocabulary and the same style, but to lift up many of the new ways of doing theology, while we also honour the old. So we've got an ambitious timetable ahead of us.
And Dr. Choromanski?
Yes, from our perspective, from the perspective of the Catholic Church, we do appreciate to work on this pilgrimage of justice and peace issue. On that issue, there are no significant differences between the Catholic Church and the position of the World Council of Churches. All of us are for peace, for justice on all these levels, political justice, economical justice, social justice, gender justice, all kinds of justices that we can imagine. So this is a good thing, because on what we can call witness to the world, we are quite together. I would like to see the Commission to put the stress on what are divisive issues. And first of all, I think that in the future, more and more attention should be given to the moral discernment and moral differences between us. And the other thing is obviously to analyze the responses to the church text and to follow up on this project. But thinking about the future and about the potential divisions or dangers for the ecumenical movement and for the unity of the Church, I would privilege the reflection on moral issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your passion for ecumenism. Good luck. And we will be back tomorrow. And that's the theme, Middle East.
Thank
It's
you.
time for lunch.